Great guest today, folks. Great guests. I say that very rarely. I say good guest, sometimes average guest, sometimes super good guest, but I never say great guest. Today we have a great guest, but that's in a second or two. Won't reveal it right now. What I will reveal is I think I've decided to get a PhD doctorate. Bear in mind, I'm a BA 1 year LLB, which is like an incomplete super grad. And I just read this thing, well, it was sent to me on message. Online PhD doctorate degree from SSBM Geneva, available online, whatever you want, however you want to specialize. So I'm thinking of taking that. So maybe a little later in the show, we can just do a little poll to see what subject I should do my PhD on. Because I think it's about time that people call me with respect and reverence as Dr. Cyrus Brocha. In the meantime, let's get back to our guest. And let me tell you, this wonderful guest of ours goes through so many different avatars. It's very difficult to pigeonhole her in one. In fact, we shouldn't do that. We should just call her exactly what she is, the legendary, iconic Dolly Thakore. Dolly, welcome to the show. Ah,
Lovely to be with you, Cyrus.
I see you brought me flowers, Dolly. Thank you so much for the yellow flowers out there. This is something other
Paper
guests should
flowers.
also do. This is what you can't, manners, etiquette, you can't buy it at the end of the day. This generation of morons does not behave, but look at you. Already a classy background, yellow flowers for me. Best guest ever. We're going to send you a special prize. Listen,
Yeah, but
Dolly,
let
the
me
book.
disillusion you. These are flowers from my play that I'm doing, which is on Zoom, and they are paper flowers.
So cheap English theater actor. That's what it comes down to. Where we recycle everything. Fair enough. Listen, this book. Let's begin with that. Do you have a copy of the book so I can show it
I do.
anywhere lying around? Let's just put it up for those who are watching the visuals as well. And there it goes, Dolly Thakore, and it's called "Regrets None." Fabulous title to begin with. There's a passage in the book. I'll just read it out just to set the pace a little bit here. Nothing worked out the way I thought. Nothing. Full stop. Not one single thing. And yet my heart is full, and the memories spill out of me and away, carried by this restless breeze that never settles. What a ride! Every good thing and every bad thing, and all in the middle where life is lived. And so, Dolly from Delhi, when you look back, what do you see? That's it's amazing. First I thought it was a little self-deprecating, but it's really absolutely beautiful. I was just thinking, it's almost like the modern Socrates talking to us, saying, after all life's journeys, I've learned nothing, but that itself is like a lesson. So, what do you see? Let's start with that question, Dolly. Looking back, difficult question, but what do you see?
But Cyrus, I have put it all down in my book. There is not a moment of my life that I regret. I've enjoyed every single bit. Okay, there's been pain, there's been a few tears here and there, but I have loved every single moment that I have lived. All the people I've met, all the lives that I have, opportunities that have come my way. Um, what more can I say? I mean, actually, regrets none describes the whole book, and I have been writing to all my young friends to say that read it because I think it should give them courage, confidence,
No,
security to go ahead and make their own decisions.
exactly what you're saying, the positivity and the positive vibe that comes out of and it's not like it's just been a hard life or anything like that. It's been a very colorful life, I'd put it that way. But I'm thinking of myself as I age and reading your book, and I'm just thinking, she seems to have, almost like good wine, been more gracious with the years, and I'm getting more cranky and aggressive. Everything irritates me, everybody irritates me, you have no idea. And I was thinking that's the way it goes, as we go up in age. But your story is so different. Just want to quickly point out to people who of a younger generation who may not know everything about you. Dolly is difficult to. I don't know how to put you in one box, so I'm not going to do that. She's an actor. She's a newscaster. I sat and wrote this down, Dolly. I never do homework. I sat and wrote this down. This is the respect we have for you. Actor, newscaster. Oh God, newscaster takes me back because I was a really young boy, and those were the days when newscasters were really glamorous, and you were the most glamorous of all. Casting director, public relations, handling huge accounts, lighting designer, which is no mean feat on its own, filmmaker, author now, censor board, visiting faculty at IIT, and then of course there's all those other conquests on stage and beyond. So this is you, and I mean, there's no point even defining you. Although there's this very strange phrase which I wanted to ask, which Swati has used. While talking about you in the blurbs, and she says, "For-mother, feminist for-mother." वो क्या है, Dolly ji? What is a foremother?
What is that? I can't follow that.
Swati Chopra has used a term saying you're a feminist foremother, FOREMOTHER. So I had no idea what foremother is, as in before
Foremost,
mother.
I suppose.
All right.
Foremost
Well,
mother.
foremost mother. Okay, fair enough. I stand corrected, and I think that that's something we can't, belittle at all. We'll get to that. Bringing up your son, who's a wonderful young man, who pinches me in my nipples every time I meet him for some reason. Why does he do that, Dolly? So aggressive. He's
I have
passive
no
aggressive, but
idea.
he just goes
That's a side of
squeeze
him
like
I
that.
don't
He
know.
thinks my chest is overdeveloped, and he won't let me forget it. We have to go back a little bit. I know you've already everything's in the book, folks. So please pick up the book for details. I'm just going to try and get it to reminisce a little bit from here and there. First and foremost, I had no idea. I've known you since the 80s when I did a play when I was a young boy, and I didn't know that the surname was actually Rawson. This is the first eye opener for me. I also thought you were Lucknow based, but you were completely Delhi. But go ahead. So tell us a little bit.
My
It's all there in the book, but just a little
uh,
bit about the childhood.
Look, my father was in the Air Force, and he was an orphan. His parents apparently died when he was a month old and 3 months old. So, or in fact, he was a posthumous child, I was told. But these are all stories that have come to us over the years. But he was brought up by a missionary uh, in Palwal when he was only 2 months old or a month old. And she was a Miss Rawson. She was a British missionary. But at that time, he was called Dawood Roshan. And uh, but then because he joined the Air Force, the British people at that time couldn't pronounce Roshan. They changed it to David Roshan, and he accepted it because really, since you don't have any background, you're dependent on other people. Look, just like I've accepted Dolly Rawson, because I had no say in the matter, and so I've been brought up as Dolly Rawson.
Good. I'll just make a quick point to call up this guy called Ritik Roshan, and his name now turns out to be Ritik Roshan, as per the logic implied from the early days. We can't deny it, and we will not deny it. Just a quick word while reading the book. So, where's the did you have any sort of idea of what you're going to do with your life in terms of getting into this kind of entertainment business and the media, which you did as a young girl? Was there ever a thought, or it just
Cyrus,
happens?
in a way, yes. When I think back, I've always wanted attention. And at that time, I was 5 years old and I was cast in a play, and I loved the applause, which again is in the book. And since then, I've taken part in debates, elocution contests, interclass, inter-school plays, whatever. And that is what has made me into what I am. So that was my grooming ground, as it were.
How do you think you
I
would have
never
coped?
hesitated from facing an audience and doing things.
Fair enough. I think that's absolutely right, confident and straight up. But what do you think you would have done if you were born in this generation where you have to use Insta to sell yourself and do say recite a poem that you've written and put it up on Insta and get people to like it, etc. Would be quite different from the world that you and to some extent I grew up in.
Well, I loved the world I grew up in, and I do feel saddened that things have changed so much. Um, I shan't even mention the few people who have come up against the kind of life that we've led. Uh, but I'm glad that I lived at a time that I did.
You think it was more? Let me be upfront. Do you think it was more liberal India for the young Dolly Thakore? I'm not even talking about later on when you were in Bombay, but as you grew up, did you
I
feel?
wouldn't say it was a liberal India in that sense, but it was certainly an India which gave you opportunities to say, do whatever you wanted. And that is what gave you the confidence. Agreed, we were brought up by Jesuits or by nuns, etc. And somehow you never questioned them. I was not one of those that contradicted people, etc. I accepted it, and I think I got the best from them. I am what I am largely because of them.
Yeah. Well, the interesting part is where did the point come? It's in the book, but where did the point come when you moved to Bombay and then, of course, go to London? There's so many things to discuss. I think we can not get into chronology because that'll take us all over the place. We'll get into maybe the avatar or the thing that you've done. So what brought you to Bombay first?
Dilip, my first ex-husband.
Let me put him in the list. I did not put him in the list. He's now in the list, Dolly Thakore. Dilip Thakore, of course. Bombay Gym bar legend. Yes.
No, look, I went. As I said, every opportunity that came my way, I took it. I never questioned it. I never hesitated. And as I've also confessed that I didn't come from a money business family, or my family was not ambitious to try and push you into anything, but I just did it. I got an offer of a job. I worked with the BIS. They said I met the head of the World Service of the BBC at one of those garden parties, and he said, "If you come to London, I'll have a job for you." And before I knew, I didn't even have a passport. I didn't have money, nothing. And before I knew it, people sent me papers to sign. And in the India of that time, it was very difficult to get abroad. And before I knew it, I had an entry permit to the UK. And I went to London and I got my job. As I said, I've confessed in my book, things have just fallen into my lap. I've never had to stretch my hand for anything. And I hope it continues for the few years that are left.
He, but you sort of mentioned that you're more like a child of destiny, not child person of destiny. As in things just happen and you didn't played your part, but you haven't been instrumental in making things happen. They just happen. Coming back to so you go to learn, not learn, but to experience newscasting, and then you. Why did you come back?
No, what did you say? Come back to what?
Once you go to London, why did you come back? Why did you want to
Oh,
stay there?
because, listen, I was 23, 24 years old. Every bloody Indian woman wants to get married at the time. And the conditioning we had was that all my friends had been married by then, my college colleagues. And Dilip and I had met in London. And Dilip stupidly said, come, come. He didn't want to be a second class citizen in England. He wanted to be in India. So he came back, and on my birthday, he sent the telegram saying, "Nothing's changed. Come back. Let's get married." And I, like a fool, packed my bags and everything and returned to India because I thought that was what the future was going to be. But it wasn't. But I'm not sorry about it. And let me also add, 7th of December is his birthday. I just happen to be in Bangalore, and he's in Bangalore. And I hope that we celebrate his 78th birthday together.
Actually, from what I remember, you've been pretty kind. There was, I wouldn't say criticism or non-criticism, but looking back at the marriage and stuff, you've been pretty kind. You've said all kinds of nice things, and you've really not pointed fingers or thrown mud or anything like that.
Cyrus, that is life. You go through it. You can't expect everything to be your way. You move on, you accept it. Yes, as I said, there was sorrow, there was tears, but you move on. You don't sit there drinking yourself to death or anything like that.
I'm just asking because I'm just thinking me and the wife are almost at loggerheads 24 hours a day. Maybe marriage is overstayed its welcome between you and me. I'll talk softly because she's in the next room, and maybe it by itself the institution is difficult. Let's not get into the personal issues, but yeah, it's amazing. I wish you people, as you finish your first marriage, write a book about that so that we about to get married can then decide whether it's worth it or not. Next time, Dolly, please. We'll move it along because there's so much to talk about. Really. Then you come back, you get married to Dilip, then you move into newscasting. Is that the next step here in Mumbai?
No, before that, there was my news reading. I was in advertising. I did 6 years of advertising, which I must say was very, very soul killing for me. I didn't quite like that. But then I got because the radio in those days there was no television. Radio has been my big thing. My big heroes were Melville de Mello and, believe it or not, Hamid Sayani, who later became a relative and who I got to know very well. But my God, I never missed a single Monday night Vinaka hit parade or Ovaltine amateur hour, whatever it was called, to what, and I was all of 10 or 11 years old at that time. But I've always wanted to be a broadcaster. And there you are, I've achieved what I wanted to do. I met all these people, I knew them personally, um, and I think my voice is now, or was at one time, pretty recognized and acknowledged by people. And then television came along. So actually, my career has been more radio and television than casting, and all those came later.
Just going back a second, you said advertising killed your soul. Not the greatest experience? Do you mean because the whole business is sort of
No, I really no. Quite
false?
frankly, I went to All India Radio. They offered me 300 rupees as a producer, and 300 rupees is what I was paying as a PG in a little place in Pilava, and I needed to eat. So I heard about advertising. Um, I mean, you're asking me to go to details. I knew of Kabir Bedi, I knew Frank Seymour's, so I went to see them, and they offered me a job which was 500 rupees as opposed to 300 rupees. But I did continue to do broadcasts for All India Radio. I had a program called Woman's Hour, which paid me 18 rupees per program every Sunday.
Wow, you remember
But
all the
I
rates?
didn't, yeah, that's what I was paid at that time. Even when I
Okay.
started television, the news reading was 50 rupees per time, and we were ruled by the MRTP, which meant you couldn't do more than two broadcasts a week. So but
Oh,
one's learned and experienced all that. And I mean,
wow.
I think I've had a great life, and I wish other people would be happy about these kind of
And
experiences.
the paying scales you talk of are what I get today from the podcast. 50 rupees, 18 rupees is exactly what we get paid. So let me tell you, nothing has changed in the world of media. Just the media itself has moved a little here and there, but not us. Um, but then there was also theater, right? As you got into advertising, so
Yeah.
you one of those
I've
people, the
I've
first.
always I've always done theatre. Even in London, I was on the stage
Oh, really?
on big theatre. I did theatre, not the great London West End, etc. But I did theatre there too because we formed a company called KADA, which was Kala Amateur Dramatics Art. Because all the Indians had got together. There were people like Zora Sehgal with me, Shivendra Sinha, Rani Dubey. I don't know whether these names mean anything to any of your listeners because these are all a totally different generation. But we did theatre. We, that's how I met Jason Takunia in London. He was in London at that time, and we used to rehearse. We were doing Lorca or Yarma. I can't even remember which place we were doing. I used to rehearse in my flat in London. It it did take off, but at that time, I think all these people had moved on. But I've done everything that Vinod Pandey, who I think the film world would recognize. He was in London at the time. I actually directed me in a play there in Hindi, and so I've continued doing theatre. None of it paid. None of it paid. But those are because I loved doing it, I continued. And that's what made my career. That's what made me the person I am.
Yeah, when the first time I saw you, I was about 10 years old or something. And at some party, my mother pointed out and said, "That's Dolly Thakore, the famous newscaster." And I just remember that going back in time to the 80s and that period of time where you guys were the real celebrities for a lot of people, for let's say, for the middle and upper middle class society of India, but very much the celebrity. We were all in awe. Oh, wow, you met Dolly Thakore. And I remember I was just a young boy. So then who would think that you'd rub shoulders with them and they call you by first name years later? Going back, it's quite a lovely story for us as well. And let me just say that if we don't remember those who set up our lives before, we can't go forward. So when you're saying if they don't remember the names, they better find out who these people are. Vinod Pandey, I'm sure everybody knows to begin with, but the old order changes. That's fair enough. Look, casting director, public relations, lighting designer, filmmaker, author. Of course, we're talking about censor
I
board,
was not a
visiting.
lighting designer. I don't know
Well, it's
where
in the
that's
book.
crept in from. No, I have my
Maybe when
co-writer.
Kwasar wanted to save money for his plays, he said, "Mom,
No,
you'll have to do this, that, and the
Arya
other."
Lahiri. Arya Lahiri, who
Go
compiled uh, uh, all
the
the
book.
work, etc.
Yeah.
Because I gave him 3 feet of manuscripts and paper cuttings, etc. And said, now you do what you want with it. And so Arya Lahiri is a lighting director. I'm not.
All right. So maybe he drank too much on one particular day and just slip that in. But I'm sure you would have been. So let's just leave it at that. Let's not deny it. I want to go back to casting director because you've been on some of the biggest films. How did that happen? Firstly, you're more in front of the camera. You're one of the glamorous set of that generation and continue to be so. So how did you then switch to casting, directing, and I think you were
You
the
know,
first, one of the very first.
the best known one is Gandhi. I cast for Gandhi. And Rani Dubey, who knew Richard Attenborough in London, rang my doorbell. I knew Rani in London quite well. She rang the doorbell and one afternoon, and she walked, and I opened the door. I was breastfeeding Pasa on my divan, which was on the
Whew.
floor here, and I walked in with Richard Attenborough, and we sat here. And there were lots of pictures of theatre on my wall. We had that, uh, all Alex theatre. Uh, 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 what he'd done, plays that he'd done, etc. And we began talking about theatre. And then I invited Alec to come and join us for dinner. Well, not invited, I mean, I asked Alec to come home earlier than he normally does from the desk. So Alec arrived, and Richard Attenborough looked at him and said, "That's my dinner." And that was it. Before 2 days later, Richard rang me up and said, "Doll, would you like to be the casting director?" I knew nothing about it, but it just worked from there. And they treated you so well, and I learned a hell of a lot. I learned everything about casting on that particular
But
trip.
Dolly, didn't Alec have a beard when he walked into the room? How would he look like? How
But he
was
was tall, he was bent, he was slim, and I suppose
bit of
Richard
racial profiling by
Attenborough
Mr.
being the
Attenborough?
director he is, uh, spotted that in him.
Okay, all right. So that was, and what a big film that was, an Oscar film, Oscar-winning film, a film that probably lots of cultures got to see because of the kind of, obviously the status of the main protagonist. So that really propelled this casting director thing. There's so many other films on in your biodata, big movies with lots of big names as well. Far
Yeah, but
Pavilions, India.
none of them were as big as
Are you
Gandhi.
serious? Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? I mean, due respect, if you ask lots of people which
Yeah,
one would they
I
rather
only cast
watch,
Om Puri in Temple of Doom. I didn't
yeah.
even meet the director, but I was casting director. When they asked me, I suggested Amrish Puri. Before I knew it, they had said yes, and Amrish Puri was sent off to Sri Lanka, where we shot that.
Wow. So Amrish Puri owes his international career to you. I think that's the Amrish Puri's lawyer calling up. Uh,
Yeah, maybe.
Unpaid dues from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Only on our show can you get this kind of live footage. Don't worry, Dolly. Don't worry about it.
I'm
Dolly's now
sorry, there are too
talking
many phones
to
ringing.
cast. It's amazing. They're all ringing at the same time.
I know.
All right, that's been taken care of. Let's talk then casting. One more film that I had marked out. I want to talk about. Yeah, Such a Long Journey. Did you cast for
I
Such a
must
Long
say
Journey?
that that was quite an experience because uh, uh, I met the writer and the director, and I had a great deal to do with that. Uh,
But
I
for you,
didn't go on location with it. I think but I was there with them.
so as a casting director, do you feel sort of proud when the film comes out and your guy or your lad or your the lady you suggested has done a phenomenal performance? Is that something like a coach in a
Cyrus,
sport for you?
it's like any other job, and the casting director is not propelled and projected in highlights at that time. It's the actor, so he doesn't give you any breakthrough. But yes, I've made very good friends, and the one thing about me is I never forget people. I hope I don't bear grudges against them for too
You
long.
forgot me. You forgot me. I've never been cast. Such nice pictures. Look at them. I'm feeling so bad. The Temple of Doom, Mysteries of the Black Jungle, Sixth Happiness, Such a Long Journey, Miss Betty's Children, Dance Like a Man. Nothing. There's no Cyrus Brochure in any of them. You forgot me,
I don't
Dolly.
know why I didn't think of you.
Especially Dance Like a Man. Got a crack at that. Public, but again, amazing. You just switched from one thing to another. I suppose theater was sort of constant to some extent, but then public relations, another innings there.
Yeah, that started with S.H. Benson's, which then metamorphosed into Ogilvy Mather and then Ogilvy now. But that came along there. And I was the PRO for the launch of Cottage Industries. So you can imagine how far back it goes. Cottage Industries is closed down, but at that time it was the one big
It was
thing.
born under you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
and close down while you're still very much on top. Um, so never in your mind were you thinking that I'm going to stick with one thing. One thing is Dolly. Dolly is just someone who wants to evolve a little bit, do different things. I mean, you still were doing the casting, directing thing as well. It's not like you'd given
Look,
anything up.
suddenly media became such a big thing, and and under the embrace of media, everything came into that, whether it was radio, television, PR, writing. I was writing, as I said, I was writing at one time 7 columns a week, and I used to sit at bus
Wow.
stops and write columns. I've written for almost every, certainly leading newspaper in the city. And I even wrote for the Telegraph in Calcutta. I also wrote for uh, the Khalij Times in Abu Dhabi. I mean, but all these were just jobs that one did and enjoyed greatly. I mean, I'm very happy to say that I've enjoyed doing everything. Nothing was a chore. I've never considered anything a chore. Cooking, yes. I'm not a great cook. I don't like cooking.
Neither do
But
I. But what I'm really enjoying about your entire life story is the fact that you're not very into the whole label thing. And the labels come and go, and avatars come and go. There's no sense of that anything has to be almost the permanence is a responsibility which kills people's personalities. It looks like while you're just evolving to different things and having fun with your life from start to finish. There's a sense of freshness. Because there's always something new as you went along. There's always something new. Even now, you're still doing things. It's like there's no one can stop you. Maybe in that sense, you're from this generation, although you're from that generation, because this generation is going to be like that. It looks like we're not going to have people going to work for 40 years and getting a watch at the end of it from the company. It's all changing. So Dolly, you're the pioneer. You set the standard. I hope the government gives you your Padma Shri, Vibhushan, Bhushan, and everybody else, the entire family. What do you think? Well, you never know. I mean, they should. There's no question. One last thing, and then I want to quickly, before we go into the break and the AMAs, I wanted to ask you about the three men in your life. Not to push you, but if you'd like to say
I'm
anything.
still in touch with all of them. Sadly, Alec left us 3 years ago, but I was in touch with all three of them, and I still retain a very good relationship with them.
So let's first start with Kwasar. Tell us a little bit about Kwasar. You brought him up
I
single-handedly,
am
almost.
very proud of my son. He's going to hate me for saying this on
The pincher. Hmm.
yeah, but he's grown up very nicely. He has the right values. Um, I would like to take responsibility for who he is, but I don't know whether others would agree. But I think sending him to Rishi Valley was a great idea, which is the school that I sent him to. And the people, the friends that he made there, the people that they've all become my sons, and my house is an open house for everybody. And Kwasar has grown up with the right values. I hope that you will bear me out in that, because as a belonging
No,
to
I'm
the
a big
younger generation, you have much more to do with that world than I
I'm a
do.
big fan of your son's. I'll tell you something. Maybe he gets it from his dad. I don't want to get into that, but he's got that sort of inner steel, because he's very gentle and soft spoken and all that, and easygoing generally. But he's also extreme. You can see that he's extremely strong, like in a sort of strength which perhaps I don't have. So while he appears a little fragile physically to me, he's completely the paradox of that. When you look at him from a mental and emotional point of view, I think he's a very strong man, and he's also one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. He's just well brought up. So that goes to you and perhaps 10% to Rishi Valley as well. Because he's always nice. He's always polite. He's always got a kind word or a funny word. He's always fun. And if you just stop pinching my nipples, for God's sake, I'm sure our relationship can grow from there. Uh, and he pinches Kunal's cheeks. So he does take a few liberties with the oldies, I must say. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
look, he's I'm surprised he does that so cheekily, because you guys have known him from the day he was born.
they have no respect for you. You try to tell them that. I've seen you as a toddler. I've seen you, urinating in public and all that, but nothing. No respect. It's unbelievable. But anyway, doing so well. Of course, blue-blooded. Alec on one side, Dolly on the other. So you had no choice. Let's move then to Alec. Again, just as with Dilip, I thought, because I didn't read the whole book. I read bits and bits to be ready for the show. Um, you've been. Is it fair to say kind?
I missed that.
I'm saying I don't know how to put this. Is it fair to say you've been very kind to Alec? I don't. There's no rancor. There's no bitterness
No,
really in
no,
your
but
writing, or
how can
it's
they
it's
be anchor.
Because a lot of
You can
women,
see
when it
your
happened, Dolly,
individuality. Your
but a lot.
your yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, no, I'm just trying to talk about a lot of women. You were like a symbol of, this strong feminist woman who took on these very powerful men, etc., etc. So there was that sense of loggerheads, and then having to cope, which mustn't have been easy at that time. I think you mentioned a little bit of that.
You've got
But
to have
but
confidence in yourself to get ahead.
I'm
Can't
still
sit and
amazed.
cry all the time.
But yet, no rancor, no bitterness, no. I mean, that's fantastic. I would think. Also, you seem to have as the years went on, your relationship with both Dilip and Alec got better.
Yes, it definitely did. I mean, I don't know whether it got better. We didn't see each other all the time. It was 10 years before I began to see Alec again. But it was after that we've been friends. All our birthdays were celebrated together. Our anniversaries were celebrated together. Uh, the last gift I received was from Alec just before he left us. Left us meaning to play the harp upstairs.
Yeah. All right, there we go. No rancor, but plenty of humor. That's the way to live your life. Yeah. All right, Dolly, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to bring Silvery in. This is from a generation who doesn't know about newscasters, but he knows who you are very well. And he's a young boy. He'll be very respectful. So please make fun of him. Just make him feel uncomfortable and awkward. That would be great, Dolly. Thanks. Silvery, also known as Antariksh, come in while I quickly.
Hello, good morning, ma'am. Hi, Cyrus. Good
Hey,
morning.
this is Antarish. Why
Yeah,
don't
Yes,
you
ma'am.
his
My
call
name
me
is
pet,
Antariksh.
Sylvie?
his stage name is Silvery. He's an erotic bar
Oh,
dancer,
okay.
Dolly.
Okay.
At
It's
night in Andheri, Malad, these two places, his name is Silvery, and he wears sequins and just heels and a handkerchief, and
How
yep.
sometimes
lovely. I love
I get
people like that.
I get great tips. Yeah, it's good times. No, that's not true, ma'am. That's not true. It's just a nickname Cyrus has come up for me,
yeah, you
which I
don't want
am
to hear the whole story. It'll
honored.
take too long. Yeah, yeah.
That's fine. That's fine.
Um,
No problem.
all right. Maybe before we
Mm,
go into AMAs,
Yeah,
anything you want to ask Dolly?
yeah, ma'am. What was it like? You talked a little bit about casting for Gandhi. What is it like hanging out with Richard Attenborough and Ben Kingsley? I saw some photos of yours with them. Uh, what was it like
I'll
back
tell
in the
you
day?
one thing about Richard Attenborough. He never remembered people's names. So everybody was darling puppets to him. And that, at that stage in your life and at that age, was adorable. I mean, to be called puppet and darling by Sir Richard Attenborough, it warmed your heart. It made you love it, and so that made things so much easier. But he never forgot anything. He was a
Wow.
great person for detail, and he was involved in so many things. And because every evening we used to have meetings, and there would be the production meetings over the trains and the various things, the costumes and all that. And yet he concentrated and got performances out of people, the kind that you see on the screen.
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing guy. And
this is
very
another way.
kind, very gentle.
There's a second trend of thought here that he may have also been a little lazy. I empathize with him a little bit. He walks into the room, he sees Alec and says, "Jinnah." That's it. Why look to 250 biodatas? So yeah, I like that. Let's get to the point. There's some
Yes,
filmmakers in India who just
in
come to a hotel
all
and say
your
location.
years, Cyrus, in all the years that you've known the Padamsees and Bombay and all the actors, who else could have played Jinnah?
Fair enough. That's absolutely, and you're absolutely right, especially with the beard off. I mean, then it was like, oh God, it was scary. The likeness was
I didn't recognize him when he shaved off his beard in
I'm
jail.
saying if we was to send him to Pakistan at any point, they'd felicitate him immediately as he gets off the plane. People would be like, wow, yeah, yeah, immediately. Yeah.
Ma'am, did you ever end up meeting Richard Attenborough's brother, like Sir David, by
Sir
any chance?
David, no, I never did, though I've
Oh, yeah.
watched all his documentaries.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course, of
And, and,
course.
And
and
in
Silvery,
a
just
certain
because,
world, he was more respected than Richard was.
and let me
Wow.
explain
Okay.
to Silvery, English theater is not made up of animals. They just behave like animals. It's no different. Please understand. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Fair
All
enough.
right. Shall
All
we
right.
hit the AMAs?
Yes, absolutely. We have quite a few AMAs for ma'am. This first one comes in from one of our regular listeners, Kashin Shetty. Welcome back, Kashin. He says,
I do know him.
"Oh, you know Kashin Shetty? Wow,
It's Quasar's let's say,
Well, I know
Okay,
most
okay.
actors of a certain age in Bombay. The newer
Wow.
generation, I
you
don't.
forgot she's also a casting director, so she
Correct, of
has
course, of
to be
course.
on top of that. And her son is
And
one of the
Sachin is
leading.
a good actor.
Yep, yep, absolutely. All right,
Now,
Kashin asks,
no,
yeah,
no,
go
now
ahead.
we've got the
Mhm.
questions. I'm thinking, no,
Yeah.
not Kashin. Now we want to ask some more questions. Go on, go on.
Yeah, okay. Kashin asks, as a casting director, okay, he says, hello again, Dolly Auntie. As a casting director for foreign projects, have you ever had a project where they wanted actors with stereotypical Indian accents? How do you deal with such requests?
The fake ones, the lampoon accent, the Peter
Yeah.
Sellers in party wrong Indian accents.
Fortunately, I never had to face that.
Oh, wow,
But
that's good.
they were,
It's a bit like
they took the actors for what they were. Like, for instance, let me just go back to Gandhi. Pankaj Kapoor, who played Pyarelal in Gandhi, he dubbed Gandhi in the Hindi version of it.
Oh.
And the same thing goes for quite a few other actors. You didn't change their accents, but you got them to play different characters and different versions of the film.
yeah, I think he's more looking at this making fun of the Indian accent thing, which the Simpsons with the character Appu and Peter Sellers with all his Indian characters has done. So sometimes for the sake of comedy, there's this stereotypical Indian accent which doesn't exist. It's a fake accent. It's not an ethnic Indian accent. It's just a roundabout accent that they've created and they use. But it works very well in terms of comedy for foreigners laughing at us.
I cast Amrish Puri, who didn't have a Western accent, but he
Correct.
was cast in Indiana Jones, and they loved the way he talked and his
Hmm.
voice and the way he communicated through that. So I've never had a problem of trying to. Yes, in the case of Kasturba and Rohini Hatangadi, I had to get a dialect coach because Rohini was not fluent in English at that time. Today she can teach everybody anything, but at that time she was not. And so I got Kusum Haider in Delhi to coach her in English. And I mean, she was just so gentle and so committed, and so Richard loved her. We all loved her, and she was my Kasturba.
But
Oh.
technically, Kasturba didn't speak that good English either. So, I mean, maybe they could have just left it the way it was in hindsight.
Then the world wouldn't have been able to understand what we said.
Don't answer that. That's a rhetoric question, which is insensitive for some quarters. Sylvie, next question, please.
Yep. All right. Next one comes in from Prithvi. He says, for Dolly ma'am, your honest take on the standard of casting in mainstream Bollywood movies today, and do you actually watch any Bollywood films? He says, I can't stand watching these days.
Of course, I do. Some of them are very good,
Yeah, absolutely.
and the OTT films are very good. I just watched something called Jay Bhim, which I must say I was quite
Jai Bhim, yes.
glued to. Yeah, but
Okay.
So, I
Jay
think
Bhim
let's
is a
understand.
one example, but there are lots
Do-
in the middle that I
Oh,
Dolly,
watched
Dolly,
also.
Dolly.
Jai Bhim was rated, just crossed like Shawshank Redemption as the best movie rated on
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
IMDb or
yeah.
something. It was some crazy
It broke
something.
the
I
record of
Wow.
Shawshank Redemption, but
I
Yeah.
whatever
wasn't
that
that
means.
enamored by it.
But one second, let's understand the question again, guys. Casting in mainstream Bollywood. So what he's talking about is the formula film. What's your take on the formula film? With all the item numbers and the family kish nonsense going on, or the super
I avoid
policeman beating
those,
up the bad
Cyrus.
guys. Yeah, okay.
I
So that
avoid those. There's enough in my life happening to keep me busy. I don't have to watch something which I don't. But I was a film critic, and at that time I did have to watch almost everything.
were you
But then
were
that's a
you a
job, so
bitchy
you're
critic?
committed. Sorry,
Were you a bitchy critic? Were you did you give them a hard time?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But I said what I wanted to, and I was reviewing films for Indian Express, midday, afternoon, and so I did watch some rubbishy films also. But so you said that, and you criticized it for what it was.
Yeah. I think what's happened is that what was parallel cinema moved into OTT. Sort of OTT is like the next avatar of parallel cinema, which we had when I was growing up. The Nasirs and the Pankaj Kapoors and those type, Amol Palekar to some extent, all those
The
people.
Indian films that I cast for, which no one was Pamela Rooks's films, Miss Beatty's Children, a little bit of Train to Pakistan.
Yeah.
So I worked with Pamela Rooks quite closely. Then I did Beham for Govind Nilang. But I think those were the only sort of non-English films that I did. I did Kim for the BBC. I did Mysteries of the Black Jungle, in which you see to be really large as life. Uh, but I haven't done that much. Today, the proliferation in films that is there, you can't keep up with them. And there
Just
are
to clarify,
any number of casting directors, whether they are qualified or not, but they're casting directors.
fair enough. I mean, like you said, it's a job, so let's not overstate it. There's some good ones, there's some bad ones. But coming back to Kim, just to clarify for people listening, this is the Rudyard Kipling Kim and not the story of the greatest dictator of our times, Kim Jong Un, because that film's being made. Silvery's casting it. We're hoping to get some good people on it.
All right.
Next one.
Cool. Next one comes in from Kirti Sharma. She says, "Hey Cyrus and dear guest, love all that you do. Uh, Cyrus, you talk a lot about the state of media, but you don't talk about you don't sorry, I'll just you talk a lot about the state of our media, but you don't really appreciate. I think you don't really appreciate the art in today's news. Of course, it's fake, but don't you think their commitment and artistry towards the con is at least commendable?"
Come on, Dolly, you take this because you are from the newscasting background, and me growing up watching you on news was, this really cultured, dignified, and may I say, very good-looking woman telling us the news, and then it changes completely to this browbeating,
Look,
screaming,
I
emotive,
as
over the top.
I have claimed, I was reading the news when news was read and not shouted. So the whole milieu of being a newscaster has changed. And we were had to read everything that the Prasar Bharati sent us. We didn't have any imagination. Here today, there's a dialogue between the people that are on the news, etc., which we didn't have. So they're different times. Uh,
I
but sorry,
No, I sorry to interrupt, but I think what he's trying to, or what she's trying to ask in the question also is the fact that you guys, your generation, and what you left us was this very dignified moderator who's telling you what's happening, and that's it, not giving you opinions. Now it's gone the other way around. They're setting up opinions, and the story's in the middle of that. They've always got a
the
side to
world
this, an
has
angle.
changed. The world has changed. I was reading the news 45, 50 years ago.
Yeah, but
There are young people who've grown up. There's far more politically things have changed, which I'm afraid has played a very great part in the change of scenes in every area.
But especially in the subcontinent, it's like they have to underline everything, push agenda. A story already has a take. I think that's where the question is coming from. It's almost like a piece of theater. It's more like acting. It is acting. Let's be frank. What we see, panels and all, people screaming and shouting, they're all performing. Everybody's there for their 5 minutes of fame where they perform and but the sincerity, the credibility, and the fact that the audience's intelligence is just completely frowned upon because we aren't allowed. Now, when you were telling the news, we were allowed to listen
But
and then make our
Cyrus,
own judgment.
I remember as a young woman when I first started to watch media, particularly exposed to BBC and the Western media, I used to envy the common man being able to say what he wanted. You didn't have to be somebody special. And I used to say, my God, in India, we don't have that opportunity. That opportunity has come now. When I say
Now.
now, it's already been 30 years since it's been on. But it's nice to know how the minds have grown, how people are thinking. You may not agree with them, and maybe you
So,
don't get a chance to argue with them, but at least they are there. They are growing up. They have a mind of their own.
okay,
They can
I'll,
express
I'll
themselves.
I'll accept that point absolutely, but I'll just say one thing then. So what's happened is it's become perverse. Then we've freed the minds, opened individual thinking, and let people, have their point of view. And now it's gone completely perverse, where political and social agenda is set by certain people in certain ways. In
Well,
that
yes,
sense,
especially in the last few days where there have been two or three stories which have worried me and angered me. But I shan't mention names, I shan't mention the stories, but I'm sure you're very aware of what that is.
Right up to maybe the early Rajdeep Sardesai thing, it was more or less okay. I was just thinking that when we were doing elocution in school, Silvery, this is now, I'm a generation between you and Dolly, so shut up and don't interrupt us. Show some respect. What basically, I remember they would say things like, you've got to enunciate and talk like Dolly Thakore on television. It would be like that. So you were like a role model for a lot of different things. And now the screaming and shouting, as you said, you've freed the people. They're no longer boring, staid, quiet, soft spoken. But with that, you've opened the Pandora's box and freed the monster, and now you can't curtail the other side of it. They've gone completely, dare I say, right, and then there's no way back from there. So we don't get a balanced opinion. Be that as it may, that you've come a long way from the silent, stoic, staid newscaster who was less emotional, etc. Anyway, let's not belabor the point, Dolly. I know you're getting bored of the podcast, looking two ugly Indian men. Nothing has changed. What's your view on Indian men, by the way? Generally speaking, you must be having a pretty candid
There are enough beautiful women to look at. Who looks at the men?
and that'd be the end of this podcast. There are enough beautiful women to look at, says Dolly. All men are evil. Sylvie, next one.
Yep. All right. Next one comes from E King Master Puppets. That's the handle. He or she says, "What are the best plays you watched in the last 5 years?"
Oh, that's a good question. Give Quasar some power here. Come on. I mean, he's done so much.
Well,
And
I'm sorry, but yes, uh, 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 Peasants of El Salvador, Project Strip, uh, which I've loved, and it still remains my favorite play. And then Vagina Monologue, in which I'm acting, has been
yeah,
the greatest thing that I've done. 20 years I've been on the play.
have you
There's
seen
been
Vagina
generations
Monologues?
that have gone through that. And
Yeah.
it's been a fantastic experience. Right now, I'm doing a Zoom play, and it's the first time. It's a new experience. It's new technology. I don't particularly enjoy it because where
Yeah.
am I overreacting? And there's nobody in front to tell me
Yeah.
what the
It's like my
expressions
love
are.
life.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
blankly you're going on about making faces or screaming at somebody or whatever it is. But still, I'm in the theater, and it's a new evolution of what is happening in technology and theater, and but there are great things happening, and it's a very good play because it's about spinal cord injury. Now, I've always been involved in theater, which is socially conscious and socially aware and has a message to give. I'm sorry, I don't like comedy. I mean, I'm that I don't like crime. I don't like mysteries. So even the books I read
Dolly,
are,
don't
yeah.
ever say I'm sorry because we don't do comedy. We do serious plays
I
which
know,
turn out to be
Cyrus. I
comedy.
know you
They turn out to
don't
be
do
comedy
comedy,
not because of our intent. Please understand. By
but
the way,
I
he's a
love the
stand-up
way you
comedian.
involve people with it. So
Dolly, he's a stand-up comedian. Silvery. So he can be the person you can direct your irate form to.
I
What do you
apologize
think?
for comedy.
I'll tell you,
Sorry.
Can
my
I?
best comedy stand-up comedian is Veer Das. Nobody
He's
can
great.
touch him.
Oh, we can't bring
He's
you back
absolutely
then.
great.
We weren't allowed to say that. No, but you may not remember this, but right in I'm talking about the 90s when Alec actually called me and said, I want to do this thing called stand-up comedy. He was quite the man with the eye on the future. You have to give him that. Would you agree? But I had no
Yes,
idea what he was talking
absolutely.
about.
Yeah.
And he'd already figured out that there was this thing and this will be the next big movement and we should get involved in it. And we had a long conversation. I was so bored thinking, what the hell is he talking about? One guy with a mic talking for an hour. And then
Alec's
boom.
mind was always racing and
Yeah.
jumping into new things. I
And the
mean,
ability to
there is
see
no
the
doubt
next
about
trend.
that.
But to see the next trend, right till his last day, he was still trying to sort of
Absolutely,
reinvent
yeah.
himself. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Next one.
All right. This one again comes from Prithvi. He says, a fun question for Dolly ma'am. Arnab or Cyrus as a news anchor?
For me, Cyrus,
Cyrus, I
for
would agree.
for
Yes.
Arnab also Cyrus. I think he's had enough. Yeah. But he's changed the game. Wow. If you go from Dolly to Arnab and somebody writes a book and you look literally at how newscasting, just as a subject, because it's a very interesting subject, and get them to do interviews and talk to all of them, you will see such, I think a metamorphosis is the word Dolly used in the beginning, from where to where. I'm just saying that somewhere along the line, a system gets abused. But perhaps it was right to free it, but then whatever. Anyway, let's go with the next.
Okay, this one is again a fun one from Kashin Shetty again. He says, Auntie, speaking of Kesar, you said
Kwasar,
once.
Kwasar. Huh.
Okay, speaking
It's
of Kasar,
Quasar, Kwasar. Huh.
Quasar.
Kwasar. Okay, Auntie, speaking of Kwasar, you once said that after all my sons, he never cast you again in one of his plays. Well, he has. He said. He says, "Well, he has never cast me in any of his plays.
There you
What should
go.
I do to
What's
grab his attention?"
this reverse nepotism? When will this stop?
No. Um, um, you must remember that I was used to a system of discipline and acting which was quite ancient. And we used to rehearse from 6 o'clock to 8:30 or 9, and after that we party or do whatever else. By the time Quasar became a director, the whole advertising world, the whole world had changed. People were working till 8 o'clock in the evening. You couldn't have rehearsals at 6 o'clock like we used to. So the rehearsal started at 8:30, and I was much too old to be energetic and full of life. And these kids would come at 8:30, and they would go into exercising or voicing and doing all that. I
Nutcases.
wanted to get my script and go straight out of the stage and do my act. So and Kwasa belonged to the younger generation. I was the oldest one there, and he wasn't going to change the whole system only because of me. And all the kids came at 8:30, and you suddenly find them doing exercises and stretching. I'll never forget Yuki doing all that. Uh, it was and rehearsals would go on till 10:30, 11, and I'd be
Uh,
much too tired by then. And I'd
Sylvie,
miss all my evening engagements, which I used to have a hell of a lot of in those days.
there you go. Sylvie, this is a lesson for those people who think theatre is an easy gig. I got to tell you because most people are working and then going out for rehearsal after that. I remember the
Absolutely.
first time I tried to do something like that. By the end of the day, you're completely. I mean, we used to go drinking and then you get revived. But other than that, it was really, really a horrible experience because your day starts early morning, ends late night, and at late night you have to be at your best in terms of your, your mind sharpness, your faculties have to be really roaring, which doesn't always happen, and now of course happens even less. But I think the part two of the question, Kashin says, why isn't he not cast? Why is Quasar not casting him?
Ask Kwasar that. I have no idea because maybe there have been plays, but Kashin has not been available, and Kwasar is working very
Wow,
closely with
ever the
people who are
dutiful mother, huh, Silvery? Huh, dekha?
under
This is called wicket
under
keeping. You
25.
get the
No,
ball and you
Kwasar
keep
is
it. Yeah,
working very closely with people
you
who are
don't have to
under
protect him.
25.
He's doing great. He doesn't need a wall now. Yeah, all right. Can we
Tesco is
squeeze?
for under 25, and I think Kashin is over that age.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's fair.
Absolutely.
That is a bit ageist. We'll talk to him about that. Now, as he grows older, the Q man should also be looking at other people and other age groups. Maybe they should reverse the trend and over 75 give us a crack. Can we do one more?
Yeah, yeah.
I've got this
Uh,
one gentleman waiting. Yeah.
sure, sure. This one comes in. This is just a cool recommendation from Tarun Kaushik. He says, "Guys, if you're interested in Tamil films, I recommend Mughis. I hope I'm saying it correct. Mughis on Netflix. It's an hour long only and deals with how a family deals with the loss of a life of a pet. It's a really simple, nice film." He says,
Good. I'll write it down.
Thank you very
Looks like
much.
it.
I will keep my
Mughis.
eyes out for that.
Wow.
Cool. There's one more question. Geetika as Nakbal asks, "Hi Cyrus and dear guest, big fan and regular listener. What is some advice someone gave you early in life that you still think about or that has stayed with you all your life?"
Um, I remember my Dolly. Why don't you take this first? Then I'll tell you my silly points.
Um,
Is there?
but there's not a moment to be wasted.
But did
Use
someone
every moment.
who said that to you, or was it something you picked up from a book or
No,
a
I
quote?
observed my grandmother and my aunt who did that. And I think that stuck with me. So I don't waste a moment. You'll never find me sitting there just lying down doing nothing. I'd either be reading a book. I don't stitch. I don't cook. But, even if I'm watching a television program or a film, it's got some relevance to my life or to my.
God, our relatives were so different, relatively speaking. My uncle Pilus told me I was a young boy, he said immediately, do not work unless you really have to. and it's something I really respect, and I avoid it as much as I can. I'm like, really, do we have to? And then even if any kind of physical exerting,
You're
I'm
not
always
doing too
thinking,
badly on the media. You're loving every minute of it, Cyrus, and we can see it.
no, I get no money, Dolly, from this or satisfaction. I'm stuck with this
Who
bearded young
did?
man
You
who
think we
abuses me all
got
the
money?
time.
You
from
think
what
we
from
got
what you
money?
said, a little bit more than we get on the podcast. Let me assure you. All right, listen, Dolly,
Alright.
this has been a fabulous show. Really great having you on. Let me be emotional for a second and say, what an honor, what a life, and what a lovely book. Please, people, go out and get this book. It's called No Regrets, and it really is that. There's no acrimony, there's no malice. There's just a nice story about one young girl somewhere in Delhi who just faced the world brazenly, if you like, and but always with a smile. And I think had a very good and happy life. And there's touchwood, lots more to come.
Thank you very much, Cyrus. Lovely being with you,
All
as
right, now,
always.
yeah, and now you can get rid of the flowers, Dolly. Now we don't need them anymore. Those paper roses.
No,
All
my
right.
play is still on. I can't remove them.
There you go. English theater. I tell you, with the cheapest people around, Silvery. Be careful. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.